So, one of the first things that I learned about abortion when I got my own abortion was that you don't actually say the word abortion. Um, I remember we got back from the ultrasound. We had just taken the amniocentesis. The results were going to be back in about a week, but the doctor was 95% certain that this was a case of trisomy 18, and he had written down the name of a doctor and a phone number and her nurse's name onto a little slip of paper. And when we got home, that was the very first thing that I did. I called them, and I got their front desk, and I was like, I just kind of blurted out, I need an abortion. And the first thing that she said is, we don't do abortions here, which makes a lot of sense. And, I just sort of froze up. I was like, crap, I shouldn't have said the word abortion. And second of all, am I gonna be able to get this procedure? What am I gonna do if I can't? Because by that point we had already heard rumors about another family who'd had a fetal anomaly and had to leave the state, and it was messy. They'd had travel, and I didn't want to do that to my family. My son was less than a year old. One of my children was less than a year old, and I didn't want to just leave for days and days. And so I said to the lady on the other end of the phone, my son is dying. If you can't help me, please tell me someone who can. And I think that was the first time I actually said the words. And it started, it all kind of starts clicking into place little bit by little bit. And my son was dying. And it really started to hit home. And, she said that she was going to leave a message with one of their nurses. They were going to call me within 24 hours, and I got off the phone, and then I did one of the dumbest things I could have done. I had looked up abortion clinics in my state, and the only one that was left was Planned Parenthood, so I called Planned Parenthood, which was a learning experience, but probably not something anyway. I called them, and they told me that the places nearest to me couldn't help me, and the places kind of farther away might be able to help me. And then later on, when I called them to confirm my insurance, they told me that the place far away that they had scheduled me at couldn't help me either. And so I was going to have to go somewhere else, kind of even farther away. And so I ended up being bounced around a lot and ending up on that hours-long drive to visit a Planned Parenthood, from which I eventually got kicked out. I've never been happier to be kicked out of a place. I've never been kicked out of a place before. I'm gonna have to tell that story someday probably, and I don't think all Planned Parenthoods are like that. Just I happened to go to a really not great clinic, and we didn't like each other. They didn't like me. I didn't like them. But eventually one of the nurses from the doctor's office called me back, and they ended up being wonderful. And they were very kind to me at times when I thought that I was losing my mind, because it felt like I was losing my mind. That clinic, well, it wasn't a clinic. It was a doctor's office. It was part of a health center for women. And then, I don't want to give too many details, but they were very kind to me, and I'm never going to forget that. They wanted to make absolutely certain that there was a diagnosis of a fetal anomaly. I don't know how serious of a fetal anomaly we needed to have, but we had a lethal fetal anomaly. So we were able to meet up with the doctor once the amniocentesis results came back. And by that point, we'd already been kicked out of Planned Parenthood, so she was kind of our last resort. And they were wonderful. They were very kind. They listened to us, both of us, and it ended up being a very good thing. But going back to the original point, one of the first things I learned is you just don't say the word abortion. And that makes kind of a lot of sense. Usually when parents are diagnosed with a severe fetal anomaly, it's a baby they wanted. It's a baby that they loved. It's a baby that they had already decorated a nursery for and picked out a name for, and it was a baby they were planning to welcome into their home, and something went horribly wrong. And that's where we were. Something went horribly wrong. And that happens sometimes. And the really wonderful thing is that we live in this society where it doesn't happen very often, and there's ways to prevent it from happening. There's, take your folic acid and all that stuff, and we don't have to see many of our children die, and that's a wonderful thing. But it does happen sometimes. And so a lot of parents in circumstances like these prefer different words. They say termination of pregnancy, they say medically indicated termination. They don't want to say the word abortion, and I've been saying the word abortion on these videos all this time so that people who stumble onto my videos actually know what I'm talking about. But at home with my family, it's the termination, or even just the procedure. When I'm out in public and talking with people, if anybody asks about the baby, I kind of play around with words and kind of give them a little half-truth to give them every indication that we just had a miscarriage. In fact, I have actually by this point lied to people and told them straight, flat out, that I just had a miscarriage. Because no one wants to say the A word. Because abortion generally, there's a lot of stereotypes with abortion, and none of them are pretty. And the pro-choice people are very, very keen to erase those stereotypes with, I don't know, like angry uterus heating pads, and I don't even know what kind of tacky little things, but I mean, it's tacky, and it's like they're glossing over the truth, and they hope that you really will believe that it's just like getting a tooth pulled, and it's not. It's a baby. It's always going to be a baby, at least as far as I'm concerned, and as far as a lot of women are concerned. I've read a few accounts from women who say they just got an abortion and it was the most easy thing, and they don't understand why everybody's so hung up about it. And it's like, that's not me. And that's actually not a lot of women. Like, a lot of women that I've read accounts from and heard stories from, they didn't expect to be on the emotional roller coaster. And it makes perfect sense to me that they would be. I mean, biologically, your body will react as though you just had a miscarriage. Hormone roller coaster, lots of emotions, kind of weepy, kind of cryy. And that's just your first trimester abortion. Wait till you get to your second trimester. I was 17 weeks along. Usually you get to feel them kicking around that time, and because my son had trisomy 18, I never got to feel him kick. Which I suppose is a blessing and a curse all at once. I really wanted a baby, and if I'm very, very lucky, I might still have a baby someday, but not that baby. But yeah, there's this long series of abortion stereotypes that no one who has an abortion under these circumstances wants to be associated with, because they aren't true. We aren't too poor to afford a baby. We wanted a baby. We planned for a baby. This wasn't an accidental pregnancy. We planned for it. We did this on purpose. This isn't a I don't want this, so I want to get rid of it kind of pregnancy. It's more like I'm trying to find the best way to handle death. And And it's definitely not a, oh, it's just the same as getting a tooth pulled kind of thing. It's a death in the family. It's very difficult. And so people who go through this usually find other ways to talk about it, other words. And I always kind of shy away from creating new words for things, because people create new words for things all the time to gloss over issues, problems. Think 1984, let's just find a new word for it and that'll work better. And I'm always cautious of that, but in circumstances like these, I can understand why people would find a new word, because the word that most people use, abortion, just doesn't seem to apply. It doesn't feel like it fits at all. And so, people naturally kind of gravitate toward other words. I remember when we were in the hospital right before the procedure, the nurse walked in. She was very cheerful and sunny. She's like, hello, what are we doing today? And I just smiled at her and I was like, we're having a termination of pregnancy. Because I wasn't going to say the word abortion. And that worked for people. Like, is in a hospital setting, when it's because your baby is probably going to die and you're trying to find the best way to treat that. It's not about politics. It's about, how can we handle this situation as best we can. And it was really interesting. Like, I looked over the nurse's shoulder at one point. Like, I just kind of happened to glance it, and I saw name of the procedure, abortion therapeutic. And I was like, well, they got to call it something. They got to call it something. I remember when I lost my first baby, the ectopic pregnancy. I was in the little cot before they wheel you into the operating room, and one of the nurses told me, because I was very upset, and I was trying to hold it together, but I was very upset. And she kind of leans over and she's like, okay, now if you see the word abortion anywhere on the paperwork, don't worry, that's not what this is. That's just some medical terminology. And I thought that was very sweet, because I would have opted out of that procedure if I had any other choice. This one was kind of different, because I technically could have opted out. I feel like that would have been delaying the inevitable. And it didn't seem fair to me to bring a baby into the world outside of the womb, where his lungs wouldn't work for him and his heart wouldn't beat properly for him, and all of his organs would be more or less affected by this disease. That it just didn't seem fair. And I wasn't going to do that to a baby, not my baby. If another person feels that it's better for them to give their baby a fighting chance, or to bring their baby into the world for at least a little bit of time together so that they can hold their baby and comfort their baby and let their baby know that he or she is loved, that's what they feel is right. And that's what's important. It's your baby. But yeah, I think I'm losing it, so I'm gonna call it a night. Talk to you guys later.